Hello everyone. We finally arrived. Welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my top 10 favorite books of 2021. This is my favorite video every year to film. It's the middle of a snowstorm outside right now, so if you hear the wind howling, you know, it's that. I literally needed to grab one of my big scarves because I'm cold, so we're using that today. Yeah, we're good to do this. I'm so excited. If you've been following along on this channel, I actually did reading vlogs this year, rereading all my favorites, because something I started doing last year, because I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't forgetting a book, or that I wasn't, comparing books in the wrong way. I don't know. It's not that this has to be the most serious thing ever, but when you are a booktuber or a reviewer, that people honestly take your opinions for what you believe is your favorite books, I want to make sure that I'm recommending my actual favorite books and not just being like, oh yeah, I really love that one. So that's when I implemented the 6-star rating system for me, and that's because I give my 5 stars very freely. If I have a good time, if it's sexy, if it's fun, if it moves me, if I cry, it gets 5 stars. And so when I was looking at picking my favorites in 2020, I was like, shit, I have 120 books that I've given a 5-star rating to. So that's when I decided to implement the 6-star. I did it at the end of the last year, and I did this whole year with having this 6-star option. So if a book was a 5-star to me, it had to also hit a couple of things. Like, it had to be very emotional for me. Like, pretty much every book that's going to be in this, it made me cry or it made me emotional at some point. It had to be sexy. The romance had to be maybe not like super spicy, but it had to be very deep. The connection had to make my soul ache. Yeah, those are kind of what got it on. So I ended up with 36 books that fit into this, and I actually made a checklist that was available for people. And those books are what I reread in the month of December. So if you follow my Instagram, you will see that in my, the books I've read, there was a lot of rereads, and that's because almost all of these books behind me I reread. There was a couple, which I say in the last vlog that went up the other day, that there was 5 that I didn't end up rereading, and that's just because by the time I've reread 30 of them, I knew which books were my top 10, and those other 5 books, though they're still 6-star reads, like that's the point, all these books behind me, they are still 6-star reads for me. They weren't going to make it into the top 10. So I was like, I've read enough now. I know where I'm at. I know which ones are my top 10, and I'm so excited to share them. So without further ado, we're going to get into this. And what I will do, except for this one I'm going to show you in just a second, I have one book that I didn't even need to put it through the ringer, because what I did do, I should also mention this too, when I reread the books, I actually graded them all. So I used this little arbitrary chart, and each book could get 10 points in each category. It was the spiciness of it, the characters, the plot, the can't put downableness, and then I think the character development is the other one too. I can't remember, but here's the chart. And so a book could get 50 points, but there's one book that didn't even need the points because it is my favorite book of the year. I'm sorry. I filmed a little bit this morning already. So I've been talking a lot. So this book is my favorite book, but I know that for most people, this won't be one that they will just pick up and read because I recommended it, because it is the 9th book in a series. So my favorite book of the year is Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone by Diana Gabaldon. This came out around Thanksgiving. I have a reading vlog and a spoiler review for this if you'd like to read it. But I just wanted to put this out there that this is officially my favorite book of the year. But now we're going to go through the romances in order from 10 to number 1. And I'm not going to list them down below, because if you're a good little friend, a good little viewer, you'll watch the whole way through and not skip ahead. So I'm not going to list them down below, because these books have been listed in multiple videos that I've done over the past year. And yeah, we're gonna go. But this is my favorite book. And every time I talk about it, having new words to read from Diana Gabaldon, following these characters who I've been reading for 6-7 years now. Some people have been reading them for 30 years. They've been following along with these characters for 30 years. And they're just so special to me. They warm such a comforting place in my heart that they will just never not be my favorite books, and yeah, they're not as spicy as some of those I say, and sometimes the plot, I have no idea where we're going with it, but spending time with these characters, the pages are never enough. Like, it's never going to be enough for me. So yeah, this is my favorite book of the year, but now we'll get into the actual romances that I reread them and everything, but we'll put that beauty right up there so that we know. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do for these is I'll tell you what it is, and then I will read a little quote from them, because I tried to grab a quote. I should have one for every single book that's in my favorite list, and then I will, kind of tell you why it hit me that way. So number 10 on my favorites of the year is Savage Hearts by J.T. Geisinger. So this one was kind of a last minute addition to the list as well, because this one came out, I think in November is when it came out. And this is what I have to say about this one. Riley Rose, my beautiful obsession. This monster belongs to you, sweet girl. I'm tied up in chains at your feet. And of course, that quote is by Malik, our wonderful hero, who is on a bit of a revenge kick in this book. He wants revenge against Declan for an event that happened in the previous book, and he is kind of pointed towards Declan by a mutual enemy of the man, who can't himself touch Declan because of reasons. I'm sorry, I have to be vague. This is the third book in a series, right? And I know a lot of you will want to read this series after it's been hyped up so much, but when he goes to spy on Declan and find out how best to kill him, he sees a woman there who looks a bit homeless and who he wrongly assumes is a prostitute that has been hired by Declan and his fiance for their carnal pleasures. And he is just drawn in by her sad state and by her cute pixie-like features, and he wants to rescue her before he kills Declan. Well, what he doesn't know is that Riley is this woman, and she's actually the sister-in-law or future sister-in-law of Declan, and she's not homeless. She just likes to dress a little bit grunge. And so when he attempts to rescue her, she's not very welcoming to this. And she's like, no, this is my future brother-in-law and my sister, and no, I do not need to be rescued. I am not a prostitute or a woman of the night. I'm a businesswoman who works from home. Which I relate to quite a bit. And so, as the books in this series tend to do, this turns into a bit of a captor-captive situation. And does Stockholm Syndrome come into play? You'll have to read to see for yourself. But the things about this series that you'll hear me say again and again is the way the heroes think they're totally fine one day, and then a heroine comes into their lives and just blows it all up. And rearranges their priorities until she is priority number one. And they do. They become obsessed. As he says in that quote, you're my obsession. You are my, you're everything that I'm after. Oopsie. And sometimes it takes the heroines a little longer to get on board. And I love books where the hero falls first. I love where they both just can't get enough of each other. And I love when the whole rest of the world might be confused, but they know that they've found their person. And I absolutely love that. So yeah, this one made it onto the top 10. I was kind of surprised, but that's what the rating system's for. It helps me make sure I know what I'm doing, right? Okay. So number 9 is Thief of Shadows by Elizabeth Hoyt. I am so happy this made it on the list. There's my beautiful couple. This is Winter Makepeace and Isabella Beckenhall, and this is what I have to say about them. I cannot deny that I would have liked to have made babies with you. A little girl with your hair and your eyes would have been the delight of my life. But it is you that I want primarily, not mythical children. I can survive the loss of something I've never had, but I cannot survive losing you. That quote from Winter is a little bit of a spoiler as to what the deep pain that Isabella is going through. This book has so many tropes that I love. It's one that I just love to tout for people. It is a book that is best enjoyed if the others are read in order first, because there's a bit of a mystery kind of weaving through it. But I'm also about to blow the mystery, and that's that Winter Makepeace is basically Victorian Batman, which is kind of what the mystery in the first 3 books are. But it's part of what makes this book so amazing, because the beginning of this book has one of the best beginning lines that I have ever read before. And it says this. Let me find it. Geez, there's a lot of praises. The body in the road was the absolute cap of the day. So yes, in the previous book, which this is book 4 in the Maiden Lane series by Elizabeth Hoyt, a series that I absolutely adored in 2021. I gobbled it up. I actually have a live show with a couple of my friends where we discuss the entire series. And what's happened at the end of the last book is that Winter, disguised as the Ghost of St. Giles, wow, I just forgot that for a second, has been injured rescuing someone in the previous book, and he has dropped in the street just as Lady Beckenhall's carriage is coming through. And so they haul him into her carriage and brings him back to her home and goes about healing his wounds while keeping his mask off. But she gets a good eyeful of him and his beautiful body parts. And then he absconds into the night and makes it back to the home for unfortunate children and orphans and foundlings that he is the headmaster of. And this school has recently gotten some new patrons, some women who have decided to fundraise for them and make sure that they're able to stay open and take care of the children who need them most. And the problem is that Winter might not be the best person to be a representative for this school, because he's kind of starchy and quiet and broody and just not very friendly to the public. So he's not a great example of, please give your money to our cause. But the thing is, his family, him and his sisters, they have been running this place for many, many years, and he's not willing to just give it up. So what these ladies do, the women who are this society, who are like the fundraisers, they appoint Isabel, who is a widow, to be his kind of teacher and help him to get spruced up a little bit. She's older than Winter, she's experienced, and again, she has a lot of pain in her heart, as that quote might have led you to think. And now Winter is he's such an amazing hero. Like I said, he's very broody and stoic. He also has chosen to be celibate, not for any aversion to women or for any religious reason, but he knew that he couldn't have a family and take care of the children at this home and be the Ghost of St. Giles. He knew he could only have 2 of the 3, and he chose to be selfless and to take care of the children and to be the Ghost of St. Giles. But when Isabel gets thrown into his path repeatedly, or he thrown into hers, as it might be, he cannot help but feel awakened for the first time. And I love how Elizabeth Hoyt is able to show a man being awakened, because usually it's the other way around. And Isabel is pretty willing to help him experiment and try these things. But for Winter, once he has given himself to her, she's it. So again, there's a lot of tropes that get flipped on their head, because for him, he's like, I've given my body to you. This is happening. And Isabel, though she, again, does feel very drawn to him, she's very worried that a man like him who loves children would feel like he was missing something, because she has had, the trigger warnings in this are what you would think. There is loss of child. There is many miscarriages she's had. Nothing is graphically depicted, but she almost lost her life with the last miscarriage that she had. And so she just basically believes that she is barren and cannot have them. And with the last miscarriage, she lost her ability to conceive at all. And Winter is just so supportive through this. He is so adamant that I have an entire home of children. I have them coming out of my ears. I don't need more. I just need you. And that devotion is something that Elizabeth Hoyt writes so well. And I just love this couple so much. It's beautiful. Number 8 is Real by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book in her Hollywood Renaissance series, and I have a real short quote for this one, but I love it. This quote is, "Extraordinary wants no parts of normal." This book is so beautiful, and it really is just exemplary of how wonderful Kennedy Ryan is and the way that she's able to tell a story in such a powerful way. This is kind of a forbidden romance. It's more of like a workplace romance. It is between Neva Saint, who is an up-and-coming star. She's actually just had her debut on Broadway. She's been an understudy, and the lead actress has went on vacation, so she finally gets her chance. And it happens to be that Cannon, who is a director trying to put together a film about Desi Blue, who is an unsung hero for music in Hollywood, and he hasn't been able to find the right actress who could play Desi. And a friend of his brings him to Neva's opening night, and he immediately knows that she's the woman to bring Desi Blue to life and to do her the justice she deserves and finally have her story be told. The only problem is that he's also extremely attracted to her, and he has also sworn off dating his actresses because he always was hesitant before, but he had a bad experience with an actress who really kind of screwed over his career for a while and got it off track. And so now he's just like, I'm not going to do it again. But the chemistry between him and Neva is so strong, and they just feel each other in such a real way. There is also a chronic illness lurking in the background of one of our characters' lives. And the way that that is dealt with and the way that their connection is made even stronger through that is what makes Kennedy Ryan's writing amazing. And you can rest assured that there is a happily ever after for you in this story, even with the pain and the illnesses seen. There's also a trigger warning for loss of a parent in this book. Kennedy Ryan doesn't let us get away with anything. Number 7 for me is Run, Posey, Run by Kate C. Wells. This is definitely a last-minute surprise for me that this book made it in so high. Yeah, it's fascinating. Here's the quote for this. "What are you doing right now? My complaint is muffled by cotton and muscle. What the fuck does it seem like, Posey?" he says, grouchy as hell. "Cuddling." He slaps my ass hard. "Shut up and take it." That, I feel, is a good, peek into Posey and Dario's life, because Dario is a psychopath who, at the beginning of this book, this is Mafia, by the way, at the beginning of this book, he is breaking up with Posey, who has been his girlfriend for a while. He's actually going to propose to her. He is the money man for a mafia. He has a head for numbers. He is definitely neuroatypical. He is considered a psychopath, and he really doesn't seem to even care that he has a girlfriend, but they have had a successful relationship up to this point because Posey is okay with that. She's okay to be available to him for sex or for board games. He very much loves playing games with her because she can beat him. He's never really met people who could beat him before, so he has this fascination for her. But he has everything in its little box, and he doesn't feel passionately about certain things. It's very interesting. So why this book works for me, again, so we start this book with him breaking up with her because someone has sent him a tape of her having sex with this man, and they've changed the date so it looks like she had sex with this person while he was on a business trip. It's actually from 5 years ago when she was still in high school, and her high school boyfriend was recording them, and he had kept the tape of them having sex. And Dario is just so enraged by this that he doesn't listen to her. He doesn't look at the tape harder. He just chases her out of his home, cuts off her credit cards, takes back her jewels, and kicks her out of his home and says, I never want to see you again. And this puts her in a very dangerous place because she knows things about the mafia. They're not going to let her go. She's actually the daughter of a traitor who has been able to stay safe by being with powerful men who wanted her for her body and for her looks. And now Dario has cast her aside, and they'll be coming for her. So she's able to get away and to get herself to this small town where she becomes a cam girl to make money. And Dario is immediately upset that he sent her away, and he's even more offended that she was actually able to get away from him and stay hidden. He finds her, you know, she actually sends him a link to her explicit content, and he is paying for the time to talk with her and try to convince her to come home. And she's like, she's reached the point now where she realizes that she has been treated badly by men, but she mostly brought it on herself, and not in the way of like, you know, this isn't victim blaming. She is looking at her life and realizing, I never asked for more. I never demanded more. I was happy to be someone's booty call, to be someone's woman, and let them pay for everything and let them do that, because that's how I was surviving, was using my body as currency. And what am I even doing right now? I'm using my body as currency again. And it isn't so much that she's getting down on herself. It's that she's like, I'm a smart woman. Why have I been letting men use me this way? Why have I just been okay with Dario just having me when he wants and never listening to what I want at all? So when Dario finally gets his hands on her again, which he does, he's very confused why she's not okay just going back to how it was. And even more so, he's confused why he's not okay with her compliance. He doesn't just want her to get along, to go along to get along. He wants her heart engaged. And he doesn't know how to make that happen because he doesn't even know how to feel. He doesn't know what emotions really are. Well, he knows what they are, but what they feel like. And he doesn't understand why he's not okay with just her complacency anymore. And he actually wants her fire back, and he doesn't know how to get it. So this book is so special to me because, number one, I love watching Posey realize that she deserves more and how she demands that of Dario. But I also love Dario questioning her, and he's like, I have to relearn this because you were okay with all these things. You never said it wasn't okay for me to do this. So now you're acting upset when all I've ever known is that it was okay to treat you like this. So it's very interesting to me. And also, this was very spicy. This one's also very violent. There's some very violent murders in this short little book. But it was clear to me when I reread this that I'd never read a psychopath story quite like this. And there's also discussion of the fact that until he found Posey, until he realized there was a person whose needs he did care for, he was a psychopath. And now he's a sociopath because he does know what to care would be like. There's very interesting conversation about that in here. And man, this book, it's very impressive. Number 6 is Devil in Disguise by Lisa Kleypas. So this is definitely my favorite historical romance I read this year. It is my favorite Lisa Kleypas I've ever read. And honestly, one of the reasons it isn't higher on the list is that, again, I did rate these based on like spice level as well. And this one, though it still hit the marks for character and, you know, overall plot and that part of it, it didn't quite hit as high on the spicy scale as some of these other ones we'll talk about. But here's the quote I have for this one from our hero, Kier. How could it be late when you're the sunrise? There's no morning sky or lark song before you appear. No butterfly would dare unfold its wings. The day waits on you, my heart, just as the harvest waits the reaper. Those beautiful words are from Care McRae, our hero in Devil in Disguise. And this book this book is such a treasure. It will mean the most if you have read at least the Wallflower books. This is technically number 7 in the Ravenels. In my opinion, it should be the start of its own series. I have had many discussions about why I think that this is called Ravenels number 9, but then the series title, it says The Ravenels Meet the Wallflowers. This book doesn't really have much to do with the Ravenels. The Ravenels show up in here, and there are characters from previous books in the Ravenels that we see, but it does rely most heavily on the Wallflowers. Our heroine, Merritt Sterling, is the widowed daughter of Marcus and Lillian from What Happens in Autumn, or It Happened One Autumn. And then she is kind of the same age and is friends with some of the Ravenel people. So again, this would mean the most if you've read the Wallflower books and the Ravenels, but for sure at least the Ravenels, because whenever there is a book that has devil in the title, it connects to the Wallflowers. We'll just say that. I know some people are still being very sneaky about what this book is about. Maybe in future years it will have been removed enough where we'll just straight out talk about it. But for the purpose of my review, it is very important to me that this book connects with the other ones, because that's what gave it the emotional punch for me. Besides the fact that this is one of the most romantic and beautiful stories I've read. And it all starts with Merritt runs her husband's shipping business, her deceased husband. And her brother helps her. One of her younger brothers helps her. And on a certain day, Kira McCrae is bringing some whiskey into the port. And there's an accident where he loses quite a few gallons of his whiskey. And then there's some problems with the fees and with the docking, and like all these things just kind of happen at once. And so he shows up to yell about it, and Merritt is just able to manage it. She is, without being condescending, she is sweet and accommodating and kind, and she's also very attracted to this rugged Scotsman who is covered in whiskey and has showed up in her, in her place of business. And they just can't seem to part from each other, and they want to spend more and more time for each other, even though they know that this could hurt her reputation. And for him, he's like, there's really nothing that could happen between us. All we're going to do is hurt each other because we are way too attracted to each other. But Merritt, she's a stubborn one, and she asks for one night with him. And after this one night, this beautiful, 48 hours that they, see each other at different times, there's an accident, and Keir loses his memory for the last, week, which inconveniently, he's only known Merritt for a couple days, so he doesn't even know who she is anymore. And it becomes clear that there is a plot to harm him. This wasn't quite an accident. There are a few events that have happened where we know that it is an accidental that Keir is being come after. They bring him to a country estate to try to heal him. And it's amazing because we get to watch them fall for each other all over again. And there's just a small amount of time in this book where the amnesia trope is happening. But I love how Lisa Kleypas does it. Honestly, she's done some other amnesia books before, but the way it's done with this one, it was just the right amount of time. It didn't drag on too long, and all it did really was reaffirm their feelings for each other. So this book is beautiful. I have so many notes for this one. We did this one for book club, and I just took so many notes. There's so many beautiful moments. We get to see so many of the characters from the Wallflowers that I adore, and I really, really hope Lisa Kleypas writes the other children of Lillian and Marcus, because I think they have 6. So as long as Lisa Kleypas keeps writing, I will keep reading. And I have to say that another thing that made this book stand out so much is I have lamented quite a bit this year about not feeling the same punch, the same joy when reading historical romances that have come out this year as I have years past. And it's really only been from authors I already love, like Eloisa James, Lisa Kleypas, Stacey Reid, Eva Lee, who have put out books that have still held my attention and that I have still loved. There haven't been a lot of new ones that have been able to capture this kind of magic. I feel that so many books are trying to convince me of something or trying to teach me a lesson, and I'm not here for that. I just want a romance as beautiful as Kier and Merritt's, and this one is so special. It's just magnificent. I love it so much. And book number 5 on my favorites of the year is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And I'm actually going to read this quote right from in the book because I had it marked in the right spot. I didn't deserve you before the war or afterwards, and I certainly don't now. Why do you think I shoved you away? Why do you think I wouldn't speak to you? After my father died, after I failed in so many ways, denying myself of you, it was my punishment. Don't you understand? From the moment I met you, I wanted you more than reason. From the moment I saw you in my house, you were all I could think about, and it terrified me. No one had ever held such power over me, and I am still terrified that if I let myself have you, it will be taken away. Someone will take it away, and if you're dead, it doesn't matter. I don't deserve you, and I never, ever will. That was quite a long one, but I feel like that quote, at the moment that we get it, when Nesta is truly breaking, you know, when she has been punishing herself for so long for her pride, for her cruelty to others, for the feelings that she feels inadequate in so many ways. And it has manifested in hate. It has manifested in aversion to people, to feeling, to forgiveness. She is trying to punish herself so violently for things that some of which were in her control, like her attitude and the words that she said are in her control. But I've known people like this. I've known people who, the more pain they've been through, the angrier and crueler that they seem to be when they're just taping cloths and bandages over a gaping wound instead of ripping it open and letting it heal. There's a lot to be said about this book and about this series. And for me, I just don't get the hate for Sarah J. Maas's writing. I know that when you become super popular, people don't get the hype, or they say, oh, these books are trash, or they say whatever. I don't see it. This story is beautiful to me. The way that Sarah is able to convey Nesta's pain and to show how, yes, she is overdoing it. Like, Nesta is overdoing all of this, you know, but she continues to be nasty and make people hate her because she wants everyone to hate her as much as she hates herself. And you can have issues with how long that goes on for. I understand. But for me, when I reread this series, I reread the series in anticipation for this one, I could see the different moments where we got to see Nesta changing and we see hope building. And then the final battle with Hybern that happens in book 3, all of that progress and breakthrough that was possible to be made is destroyed with the death of her father, because there was never a chance to heal that relationship. And let's be honest, most of Nesta's issues are daddy issues. They're daddy issues. They are a real fucking thing, y'all. As someone who has them, they are a real fucking thing. And they determine so many of the actions you make as an adult woman that you don't even know. And it doesn't matter how much Cassian loves her until she can see some reason to love herself. Because if she sees herself as unlovable, it doesn't matter how he tries to reach her, because she will never accept the love. And not just from him, from her sisters, from her brother-in-law, from the friends that she could have. It can't be there, you know? So this book was a lot. This is a long book. It is a lot of the book to watch her be in this self-hatred and pity. But it makes it so rewarding when she starts to break through of that. And oh my God, it is so beautiful to watch. And I had such a great time rereading this book. I cried so many times. It was so beautiful. And and I cannot wait to see what Sarah J. Maas writes next, because I love her worlds. I love her fantasy. I love the stories that she's telling, and I love that she has fully embraced the sexiness, because that's really what I want. This level of fantasy and that level of romance and sex. That is what I want. This is my, it reminds me a lot of, like, well, the books are not similar, but like A Heart of Blood and Ashes had that for me too, where the romance is just as important as the fantasy, and for Nessa's mental health, having someone who will unconditionally love her is as healing as what she has to go through herself, and it isn't just Cassian, like her sisters will unconditionally love her. They will give tough love when it's needed, but they do unconditionally love her. All right, now we're into the top 4. And I'm very excited to talk about number 3 and 4, because if you watch the vlog where I read these ones, sorry, I keep looking down here because this is where I have all the quotes picked out. I was very excited to see which Sophie Lark was my favorite, because Sophie Lark is an author that I discovered in 2021. She has become a dear friend and one of my favorite authors of all time. She continually ups her game. She tries new things. Not one of her stories is like the other. And that is just so rare. Like, there's some authors that they find a formula that works and they keep going with it. And that's not a bad thing, because it's good to know sometimes when you pick up an author that you are totally going to love the book that they write, because it's going to be kind of like the one you read before, right? There are authors that we go to for that. But then there are authors who are not okay with having a formula, and they don't ever want to be complacent or just, be okay with where they're at. And that, to me, is what Sophie does. And so sometimes her books don't hit perfect for me because she's tried something new, but those books will hit perfectly for someone else, right? Sorry, more coffee. Lots of talking. So when I did my rereads, I was pretty sure which book was my favorite. But then when I graded them, right, as I have mentioned, they had the exact same score. So I did pick which one I like best, but when I graded them, they have exactly the same score. So it's kind of a tie for 3rd place. But the book that I'm putting in 4th place is The Bully by Sophie Lark. And one other thing I'll admit, sorry, I'm admitting a lot while I do this. The Spy did actually make the top 10. It had squeezed into number 10. But I didn't want to have 3 of her books on here. And since The Spy, I can't really talk about anything in that book about why it would be in my top 10. It gets kind of an honorable mention. So we'll just say that here, that The Spy gets an honorable mention, but until you read the series, you can't really know why. But anyway, so we have The Bully at number 4. This is book 3 in the Kingmaker series. This book is the culmination of so many things. And as I will say, I'm very lenient on, you can read an author's books in whatever order you want. That's fine. And you know what? You can read Brutal Birthright or The Underworld. You can read those books in whatever order you want to. Brutal Birthright, it is a more linear timeline with that one, so you might want to read it in order, but you don't have to. The Bully, you need to have read those other books for this to be as powerful as it was for me. Here's our quote with this one. "If his anger was a furnace, then his love for me was the sun, burning bright enough to light the universe." So Dean Yenin, he has a lot of anger, as that quote would suggest. He has a lot of pain. And like a bully might, he's looking for someone to release that pain onto. He has a bit of that with boxing. He likes to fight. And Kingmakers, which is, as we've said many times, a little bit like a mafia Hogwarts for the children of the seedy underworld of the world. But he's looking for someone to take his pain out on. And it just so happens that in the previous book, he saw our heroine do something she shouldn't have done. And so he takes advantage of this by tormenting her and getting her to be his little slave. And when they go back to Kingmakers for the next year, he decides that he won't drag the torture out. He wants 1 month where she does whatever he wants. And then at nights, she meets him in the tower and he is allowed to have his sexual way with her. But the things these two get up to, the shocking power of their sexual connection and the quiet times afterwards, because I will tell you one thing, he does use her sexually, but all of it is basically consensual. And I say basically because it might not totally be the first time this is a coercive situation, so you could look at it as that's dubious consent. This is the mafia world, and also after that first experience, our heroine very much wants to keep going back. Okay, I'm just saying. So it might be dubious the first time, but it isn't so dubious after that. Okay, it's not. The shocking power of their connection is nothing like they've ever experienced. They don't even know what they have tapped into here, and the way that their bodies crave each other, and the way that they begin to crave each other's company. And Kat, she's always had her sister as her best friend, but her sister has a love. Like, her sister has someone now, and she's not at school this year. Or wait, is she at school that year with that? She's not. I don't think that she is. She's not there. No. And now she's kind of like, she still has friends there, but she's always kind of the quiet one that no one's really watching, but Dean was. And now Dean, as we've said, he has a lot of pain. He has a father who is shut off from the world. His mother left when he was young and didn't take him with. And he is supposed to give his life to the mafia and serve and be a soldier. And he doesn't feel like he has control. So he wants to exert that control over someone. And just the way these two connect and the kind of character arc that he has is so powerful. Like, it seems like a cliche, but this man does have a soft heart that he's never been able to nurture, that he's never been able to let grow. And with Kat, he's able to do that. He's able to let his heart show and be with someone who won't abuse it. Be with someone who is aware of the gift that it is. And when they have their fight, when they have the third act conflict, and Dean says some things he should not have said, the grovel that he gives is brilliant. It is one of the best. And this book, like, it's so great. It's so great. But again, you cannot fully experience how great this series is if you haven't read her other books first. So if you start with just the Kingmakers, you're missing out. I'm telling you, you're missing out. As promised, is my favorite Sophie Lark that I've read to date. There may be some that pass it someday, but for now, my favorite book by Sophie Lark is Broken Vow. This is book 5 in The Brutal Birthright. This is about Riona Griffin, who is the eldest child of one of the Chicago mafia families, and Raylan Boone, who is a ex-military. He's from a ranch in Tennessee, and he's doing a favor for his friend Dante, who is a friend of Riona. And when Riona has some attempts on her life, Raylan gets called in to be her bodyguard. And Riona is a lawyer. She works for the family firm. She helps them with their contracts and their dealings and all of that. And she is a woman who is put together. She is fierce. She is in control. And here's our quote from Raylan about her. I don't want to trap you. I want to unleash you. I want to free you. I want to show you who you really are. And this comes from Raylan at a time in the book where, because of the attempts on Riona's life, Raylan makes a bit of an executive decision, and he takes her to his family ranch in Tennessee, where his mother and his brother and sister and their family live. And to keep her safe, and also in a way to just kind of give her a break, but it's in an environment where he can protect her more. And Riona is just struggling with a lot. Like, she's the oldest, but she's not the heir. She is a lawyer in the family firm, but she's not a partner. And she has had to fight and scrap for everything she has. And her family does respect her and love her, but she's not seen as vital or as powerful as she wants to be. And she has been striving her whole adult life to get there. So much so that she has sacrificed a lot of other things. She's actually given her sister Nessa, her young sister, her birthright, which was her grandmother's wedding ring, which should have belonged to her. She actually gave it to Nessa's fiance Miko to give her because she said, I'm never going to have a family and children. That ring, you can have it because I know it means something to you. It was a very touching moment. But that's the vow that she's made, is that she won't fall in love. She has a boyfriend in the beginning of this book, but he's more of a boyfriend for appearance sake and to have a fuck buddy. It's not because she really cares for him or expects more. And Raylan challenges that and pokes holes at that every chance he gets. He is a plaid-wearing, twang-speaking, full of life type of man. And he doesn't want Riona to continue to be buttoned down that way when she's meant to be free. And again, that quote that I shared comes when Riona's starting to fall for him. They've already had a sexual experience between them. She's admitted that she's broken up with her boyfriend, and she kept it a secret because she knew that the chemistry between them would overflow given the chance. And she, again, wants to very much keep him at a distance because she knows that if she succumbed to him, that she wouldn't be her own person anymore. And Raylan has this way of, I mean, he says the quote, he's like, that's not what this is about. You know, it's about now there'd be two of us to take on the world and not just one. And I don't want to tell you what to do. Like, being with me wouldn't be being locked down. It would be freeing for you. And, you know, and then he takes her to the barn and straps her to a sawhorse and shows her what a little bit of giving up control could really be like. And Raylan is my favorite hero in her series. I love him so much. Riona, you know, Sophie says in her dedication that Riona is dedicated to all the hardworking women out there who have never had time for love yet, you know, but still crave it in some part of themselves. They just don't know it. And yeah, this book is so wonderful. And Sophie has her writing has only gotten better from when she wrote this. There just hasn't been another couple that's touched me the same way that these two have. All right. And number 2. Wow, I want to cry. Before I've even said anything, I'm going to cry. I was just looking up the quote that I'm about to read, and God. Number 2, my second favorite book I've read this year, is Still by Kennedy Ryan. Man, I was so afraid to read these books, guys. I was so afraid to read these books. Number 1, because I'd seen everyone cry as they read this trilogy. This is book 3 in the Grip trilogy, which really is a novella and then 2 books. And I was terrified. And I was also nervous because I'd heard that there was a lot of political talk in these and different like race relations situations. This is an interracial couple. We have Bristol and we have Grip, and he is a African-American rapper and musician, and Bristol is his manager. She manages him and her brother and a few other artists. And this is also, this man, Grip, has been devoted to winning over Bristol for a very long time. And like, Grip, the book, was hard for me because we see Grip a little bit at the end of his rope in some ways. You know, he's been trying to win her for so long, and Bristol's just so closed off. If you can't tell, I have kind of a theme this year with women who are very closed off and maybe even seen as bitchy or harsh by some people. And Bristol is definitely a businesswoman. She's been told that love will only do her wrong. And then Grip is just so devoted to winning her. But she does push other women at him. She pushes, you know, like kind of a fake relationship at him that would be good for his career. And Grip is just like, fucking fine then. But that's in Grip. This is Still. Let's talk about Still. But those were some of the worries that I had when I was reading the first books in the series. And then I got to Still. And so I actually read these books in a reading vlog, reading Crystal's favorite books. I kind of did it as a gift to her, but also I wanted to read these books, and I knew that if I was like reading them for Crystal, I would make myself read them because I was nervous. And I had read some of Kennedy Ryan's books before, but these were the ones that I really wanted to read. And I also knew that my friend Jessin loves them too. They had been some of her favorite books from years past. And yeah, I was nervous. And I read this book. And this book is actually where Grip and Bristol are together for this whole book. They're dealing with a lot of things though. They're dealing with like living in different places. They're dealing with people not approving of their relationship on like both sides of the aisle, both sides of their families. There's people that think they won't last. There's people who judge Grip for marrying white. There are just so many things. And then there is a big trigger warning in this for loss of a child that is extremely painful. And here is a quote that from this one that I have to share. When we are alone, you and I, through years, through pain, my heart will answer again and again, still. And the devotion and the love, the real ugly, painful love, when the other person doesn't even know how to wake up in the morning. And you feel like you've lost your soulmate because you don't feel that connection there. You know, they're not giving anything back to you. And there's so much pain that you're both living in. But that other person just won't let you go. They just won't let you go. Because they know that you're the reason that they're here. You know, you're the reason that they're here. You're the reason that they're able to get up every day. And sometimes one person has to carry the other. And sometimes you carry each other. But the kind of love that these two have and the kind of strength that they're able to gain from that can help them face anything. It's why I read romance. It's the romance I've seen in real life, you know. This book is tough. It is not an easy one to get through. It is painful. It's very painful. But it's beautiful. It's very beautiful. And I encourage you, if you've been afraid of this trilogy or you don't know if you would want to read it, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend that you give it a chance, because I also really appreciated how Kennedy Ryan talked about race issues in this book. And she does it in a way that doesn't make anyone feel shame. It makes you think. Because we are born into certain prejudices based on who we grow up around and the environment that we're in. And that's only wrong if you refuse to ever look at the other side. You know, there's a difference between being prejudiced about something where like you think you have a thought about it. And then when you learn different, when you're around people, when you can ask questions, when you can seek answers, and you're willing to change your mind, and or when you just hate someone based on the color of their skin, and you're not willing to make it, like not willing to look any deeper. Like there is a difference. And being ignorant doesn't automatically mean you are bad, but it doesn't automatically give you a pass either. So I think some very interesting things that get explored with this series. And overall, I'm telling you, this series is about the romance. The romance is everything. But if you're willing, I think there's some great questions that get asked along the way as well. All right. Have you guessed it? Do you know? Do you know what my favorite book of the year is? Okay, besides that one. But we talked about that. Well, we're an hour in, which should be no surprise because I knew I was going to talk quite in depth about these books. But my favorite book of the year, I'm surprised at what it is, but also I'm not, because I remember the emotions that this book gave me and the feelings that it did. And my favorite book of the year is Carnal Urges by J.T. Geisinger. This is about Declan and Sloane, who were previously mentioned when I talk about Savage Hearts. And I'm going to share the quote about this one first, and then we'll dive into it. So this is a quote that Declan says when they're discussing the possibility of if they'll have a future or not. I'll still be trying to scrub your face and your taste and your sweet voice from my mind 50 years from now, because I already know nothing else will ever be able to compare to you. Nothing and no one will ever come close. So this couple meets each other in a very interesting way. Declan actually kidnaps Sloane at the beginning of our story for his boss. His boss wants her to be kidnapped because she's been involved in some things she shouldn't. Sloane is a crazy wild card. She is bold and brash and fun-loving, and pretty much every man who meets her falls at her feet. Like, she doesn't even have to try too hard. She's just that kind of person that people will stumble over themselves to be in her good graces and have her smile at them. She's that woman. And Declan just doesn't quite get it. He's not exactly that man yet. But he sees his men. So he's kidnapped her for his boss, and he has her at the safe house. And then he finds out that his boss has been killed. So he is now the boss of the mafia. He was the second in command, and now he's the boss, which he did not want to be. And now he still doesn't know what to do with this woman who just confounds him at every turn, and he doesn't know what to do with her. And she had previously had a relationship with a man named Stavros, who is a part of a different mafia, and so that's part of the reason they were going to hold her captive. And also because she is the best friend of the woman who is married to another mafia boss. They're enemies again. So there are lots of tangled webs going on in here. And Sloane is just completely unflappable the whole way through. She doesn't let anything bother her. And Declan just can't get it. He doesn't understand why she's not afraid of him. She is just winning his men over. She's getting them to buy her like vegan food to cook, and she was willing to cook for them and all these things. And he just can't understand how she could be that way. And it isn't until we get a little deeper into her story, a little further into this story, when some more things have happened. She's actually had kind of a health scare because of how they kidnapped her. She had a concussion and some issues come up where they've actually had to bring her to the hospital. And we end up finding out some more about her past, that she's lived through some pretty ugly things. And she's been mistreated by some men. And so when she made it through that, when she actually got healthy, she actually used to be overweight as a kid and was really picked on. And that led her to be kind of a good victim for an older man who wanted to assault her. So again, there are some trigger warnings for that, but nothing is graphically said. It's more just like, this happened to me. So I want to say that there is a warning for loss of a baby, a miscarriage happened to her. So, that's kind of telling you some of the things that happened. And after she lived through all that, she got healthy, she got her mind right, she got into yoga and, you know, like strength and fighting. She knows how to protect herself. And she decided that men were desserts. That's what she calls them. And that's something we definitely see if you read the first book. She is Natalie's best friend, and that's something she says, like, you know, men are desserts to me because they're not essential to life, she says, but they're a nice treat. And that's how she's always treated men, because that way they can never hurt her. She never gives them enough time. But Declan, who, this is also an age gap, she's in her 20s. He is, I think, like 44 or 42, something in there. And he just can't help but be sucked in. And there comes a point where they just can't fight their attraction anymore. And for Declan, you know, there's that quote that I read where he realizes that he's never going to find this spark with her, this connection, sexually, emotionally, mentally. They're both so smart, so able to read the other person, and they both know they're never going to find this again. But how could it possibly work? How could it work between them when she's the best friend of this other mafia, and whether he is the head of a mafia who they don't tend to live too long, and they just see that they're doomed. But for the time they have together, there's also, you know, in the kind of the same way with Riona and Raylan, there is this aspect to their sexual play where she's able to give up control to him. And she's never had anybody even try that with her. She's never had anyone be able to perceive that she would like to give over control in the bedroom, because no one's dared to try. And Declan does dare, and we discover that that's something that's been missing in her life, being able to give over control in that way. And so it leads to this just beautiful awakening between the two of them. And the way that he calls her his queen and treats her as his queen, and the way that she's found her perfect match, who is absorbed with her, but also not willing to take her shit, willing to take control when it's needed, and able to match her like wit for wit. Their connection is so amazing. When we finally get to see the soft moments between them and see just how much he loves her and how much she is terrified of loving him back. And he actually has to force it out of her a few times for her to say she loves him, because it is the single most terrifying thing for her to do, is to say that she loves him. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Yeah. So that's my favorite book of the year. I know it's not for everyone. Some people think that it's just too spicy or that there's just too much of that. But even if you think the first one is, because Ruthless Creatures was also in my favorites of the year, but it was not in the top 10. I can understand why Ruthless Creatures seems too insta-love or just too much about the sex all the time. But I promise this one is connection first. And the way that these two recognize the power of the other person and how they want it for their own. It's one of the most powerful books I've read, let alone Mafia or any other qualifier you want to make. This is one of my favorite books ever. Wow, so thank you so much for making it to the end of this. I know it was long, but this is my year in books. You know, these are the cream of the crop. I read over 700 books this year, and these are the top 11 that I've read. You know, I will, again, have the list down below with the whole list of my favorite books of the year. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see what 2022 will bring. Tell me what your favorite book of the year is, especially if it matches with one of mine. And yeah, we'll talk again soon. Have a great day. Bye.